By the end of 2024, we will have published more than 500 reviews on BikeRadar.com, most of which from the road and gravel side have been written by these wonderful, wonderful minds, the greatest minds in cycling reviewing. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking through the absolute very best picks, our individual picks from throughout this year's testing. Obviously, we're not going to go through all 500, and we're just going to pick out our very best cheap picks and our very best, most expensive, no holds barred, fanciest, shiniest gear we've tested this year. And we're going to dive straight in with Simon's very first pick.
Yeah, so my first pick is the Van Rysel FCR aero helmet. Now,
you know, put it on just to be safe?
I'll put it on to be safe, yeah. This is video after all, isn't it? So we should pop it on.
Fast-paced content.
Fast-paced content, optimised podcasting. We should pop it on. It's got a little Fidlock clasp, which is incredible because this helmet costs just £99.99 or €100. That's kind of up price about €10 since I first reviewed it. But that is an absolute steal for basically like a flagship aero helmet. Now, you know, obviously there are a couple of tiny areas where it's kind of cut corners compared to like a Specialized Evade Free. Like you get these little like glued on ear dividers and stuff. But other than that, like there's really like so little to choose between this and say, a Specialized Evade Free, an Abus Game Changer 2. And I think for, you know, £100 or €100, it's just an absolute bargain. Most flagship aero helmets cost 250 plus.
And it looks like, I mean, I know what's actually important is that it's safe and it's fast.
Of course.
It looks very premium. It does not look like a £100 helmet.
No, exactly. And I think like, you know, even the things like, you know, we always go on about this sort of stuff, but the fact that it like the kind of the shell wraps all the way around the bottom of the EPS foam, for example.
Molded? Was that what we called it?
Yeah, I guess so. But like obviously, you know, so if you kind of look inside, the internal channeling is not as complex as we see on some more expensive helmets, and you know the kind of venting is not as open as some more expensive aero helmets, so it is like a little bit stuffier than say like an Evade Free. But it's
have got a big beautiful head of hair to compromise venting and cooling.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't shaved my head in the name of cooling yet. But Van Rysel says this has been, you know, wind tunnel developed, and you know, alongside their kind of, you know, FCR or the new aero bike that they just launched. You can watch a video about that on this very channel if you want to. We'll put a link in the description. And you know, the RCR Pro bike, I think, you know, they're working with some really good people and making some really good stuff. And the fact that they're managing to keep it all down at a really low price is like really amazing.
And what did you score this when you reviewed it?
So I scored this full 5 stars, which is kind of rare, really. And like if you read Bike Gear of the Year on BikeRadar.com, I actually picked 3 products that I gave 5 stars to this year, which is really rare. You know, I hope that I'm not overscoring things, but I don't think I am with this one, because I think this is like, you know, there's nothing else for £100 that comes anywhere near this in terms of, you know, you can get a nice helmet for £100, but you can't get one that's kind of like been wind tunnel tested and is being ridden in the world tour right now.
And can you get this one with MIPS?
You can get this one with MIPS, yeah. You have to spend a kind of additional, I think it's an additional 20 quid, something like that. So
it's about the cost of a MIPS license.
Yeah, exactly. About the cost of a MIPS license. So if you really, you know, so if that's something, you know, if you feel that that's worth having, you can have it. You know, I quite like the fact that you can have it with or without. I think, you know, like one of the kind of, you know, I kind of said that it's not quite as well ventilated as some of the real top end helmets, but it's worth remembering that you could have this and Van Rysel's, I think it's called the RCR helmet, which is the vented version.
Yeah.
For another 70 quid, and you're still change.
Still less than my preferred POC helmet.
Yeah, still change left over versus a top end helmet, and you've got a helmet for both hot, you know, super hot days, and then, you know, kind of like aero days. It's really phenomenal value.
Well, out of curiosity, very briefly, Warren and Ash, what 5-star reviews have you awarded this year? Any?
None.
None?
I've awarded none, and actually I've awarded a none in all the time I've been at BikeRadar as well. I'm a real stickler for this.
Me and Simon are throwing them out like bloody candy.
Yeah.
It's not on components. I mean, I have on bikes. I mean, you know, with the Defy, that's the reigning bike of the year. I mean, that was a 5-star bike, you know, all day long. But yeah, components and kit is like, it's a little bit more tricky because it's, especially with kit, it becomes so much more subjective.
Yes,
you know, something that fits me really well might not fit you really well, etc., etc. So there's always that caveat of it. But I'm glad to see, you know, an affordable helmet
for sure
is in the mix, because that was one of my bugbears about what we spent too much money on.
Helmets is definitely one of them for sure.
Yeah.
What's your first pick then, Warren? What's your budget pick for the year?
I've broken rules already, because this isn't budget, but I guarantee it will save you money in the long run.
Okay.
And it's lock, and it's this Litelock's X series. So we've got the X1, which won our recent test, which you can see a video on here.
Really good video, lots of good destruction action.
Lots of smashing, lots of sparks, lots of noise. And so it's more about the new generation of locks that are out there. These are armored locks that armor you against portable angle grinder theft. Now, portable angle grinders have completely changed the game of bike theft. If you go back to the previous lock test I did, quite a few years ago now, all of those like big gold star rated locks, absolute premium locks, literally fall apart when faced with an angle grinder. These new generation ones, where they've all got like an armored surface all over them. Litelock use one called Baronium, which is
very Marvel.
well, it's Neil Barron, who's the founder of Litelock. He developed this coating that they put on it, and so he's named it after himself, which is kind of cool. But then you've got like Hiplock use Ferrosafe, a couple of other brands use that. So you've got Hiplock. I mean, these are all in that test. Hiplock, Squire, Litelock, Abus, all have these armored locks, and they're all fantastically good at keeping your bike safe. And bear in mind, when I tested the first Litelock X1, independently of that big test we did out in Germany, and I tested it at home with my own 250-pound portable angle grinder.
Why'd you have one of them? Was you stealing bikes on the side?
I wonder why your garage is so full of bikes.
It's just fun. It's just fun to cut stuff.
Yeah,
sure.
It broke my angle grinder. Which I had to get through on expenses to get replaced. I've still got to break some more
That
locks.
was work, was it?
Yeah.
I can speak from experience this year. My partner, she lost a key for one of her locks, and we didn't have a replacement. And like right in the centre of Bristol, middle of the day, like it was a pretty cheap U-lock where we had a cheap portable angle grinder borrowed off of someone. I would say 8 seconds, genuine, less than 10 seconds, just like through like butter. And the worst thing was, I mean, we don't really look like typical bike thieves.
Scared people off with your Scotch accents.
Yeah, you're right. We look like porridge eaters, not bike thieves. But like nobody batted an eyelid.
Yeah.
So I can see the appeal in something like this where like, I'm sure if someone really, really, really wants to, they will eventually get through it.
But it's going to take them about 10 minutes.
Exactly.
And it's 10 minutes of sparks, noise, smoke, stopping to change the blades, because these things burn cutting blades like nobody's business. You'll break any lock, given enough opportunity and the right tools, but making it most difficult is just the way to go. And always remember, you don't need to have the best lock in the world. You just definitely have a better lock than the bloke who's parked next to you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
One thing I do think is relevant to this as well is that like in days gone past, I think so many of us would have just ridden like whatever old bike we had because we were worried about it getting stolen. But if you're like wanting to invest in an e-bike or something nowadays, bikes are just getting, commuter bikes can be very, very expensive.
Of course, yeah.
So I think, like you say, spending a bit more on a lock these days makes way more sense than in the past I wouldn't have spent 300 quid or whatever to lock up to lock.
Actually?
The X1 is 150.
Okay.
That one is the X3. That's their top end super high one. That's 250.
Yeah. So spending 250 to lock up a £500 bike in the past felt silly, but if you've got a £2,000 e-bike or something, then
the thing is like $2,000. You go like, oh, that's like so much money, but it kind of isn't. If it's a car replacement, a meaningfully good replacement for however you get to work. Like, it's not
especially
really.
if you've got it on a cycle to work scheme or something.
And it's not just when your bike's out and about. I just totally advocate. Most bike thefts are from your home, from your garage or from your shed or from wherever you're keeping it. So keeping your bike locked up at home just as securely is of paramount importance.
Am I right in saying? Forgive me, it's been a while since I watched your video, but with this, it's not gold rated now, is it? They do like a diamond.
Yeah, it's diamond, and there is diamond powered as well.
Yes, that's what it was.
So diamond powered sort of covers off power tools. The diamond rating is just they elevated the gold rating to a much higher standard. But then if it's diamond powered, just want to look for, that means it's been tested against power tools. And if you watch the video that we did, all the tests we did go beyond what Saltecure do. Because that's why we're going to the lab in Germany. That's why we're sort of trying to push things a little bit and get some fine data and noise and sparks and smoke.
It's a very entertaining video. Definitely watch out. Ash,
yes.
Your budget pick for 2024.
I don't know if it counts as a budget pick.
Good grief, you boys have blown the brief out the water.
I'm not sure it was the brief originally. But no, this is my first pick. And I haven't actually reviewed it yet for the site, but I will review it. Okay. It's a saddle rail mounted rear light.
From
Lezyne. And it's called the Lezyne Saddle Ai Alert 250. And there's another couple of other words at the end of it as well. But essentially what it does is it will either mount, if you can imagine,
Which I need to imagine through the medium of video. For the people
Exactly, but
watching
if you
it.
can imagine a bike saddle here, it'll either mount from hanging down, or as I've got it on my bike. If you have a look at our Gear of the Year article, I've photographed it this way. I've got it mounted the other way.
Okay.
So that's technically upside down, but what that means is it sits right up in the cavity of the
Of the saddle.
of the saddle, not me, of the saddle. Of the saddle.
PG.
Yes. But what it does allow you to do is fit a saddlebag underneath, which was always something that stopped me from having one of these. I could never find one that worked brilliantly well with that.
Well, what else makes this such a compelling pick for your top reviewed products this year? Apart from the fact it's very neat.
Well, the reason is because it's the only permanent fixture on my bike that's changed this year. And it's the only thing that's going to stay as well. So that's why I felt it was probably worth calling out. It's got a sensor in it as well that will detect whether you're braking or not. So they oversell it a little bit, I think, when they call it AI. Hooking into that sort of popularism at the moment. But it does have an accelerometer in it, which will sort of spool it up a little bit when you're braking. So that's kind of useful as well. Because you can now switch that off. So in previous Lezyne lights that had the sensor in it, it was always on. So you never quite knew when your light was going to sort of run out of battery. But on this and all the accompanying lights in that range, you can now switch it off. Which means that you've either got a sort of get out of jail free light, so I never have to worry about it, or it's it's the main light that I can use if I so choose.
He's quite a cute little fellow with him sort of laid on end. He looks a bit like R2D2.
R2D2, yeah.
He's such a very handsome little light.
Yeah, the only flaw I can really find with it at the moment is taking it on and off is quite difficult to access the USB-C charge port. And that I made that look easy, obviously. Now
great big strong arms.
Yeah. But when it's you don't have this
cyclist.
leverage. You won't have that leverage when it's mounted underneath the bike saddle. So you really have to kind of. I mean, they've given these chamfered sort of parts on it to try and get some grip on it, but I found it quite difficult. So that's the one flaw.
How much would this cost me?
$75 off the top of my head. I can't remember in pounds exactly. I think it's around 60.
That's fine. Most of our audiences in the US anyway.
What about
There you go.
like lumens and runtime?
250 lumens.
That is really, really bright for a rear light. That's quite absurd.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's and because it's mounted
That's
slightly
camera
higher.
flash.
Yeah, it's slightly higher up than it would otherwise be if it was mounted to your seat post. And on a bike like mine, that means it's right in the eyes of drivers as well. So they're going to see me. So whether you like that or not, that's up to you. But it's I think the battery will last if you have it in the lowest, what Lezyne calls its femtone mode, which is like a 10 lumen output, just a static. Oh no, not static, a flashing mode. It's quite low level. I think it lasts for about 60 hours without a charge, which isn't too bad. Nice. And it will charge really quickly as well because it's fast charge compatible with the USB-C port.
Good factory bit in the UK in bike light Island is because I just checked the article the other day, but there's no maximum power for a bike light. But there's a minimum. Limit. It's like 5 candela or some weird like old school measurement. They don't do it in lumens.
Which is completely different from lumens or lux as well.
Yes, exactly. It's all very confusing and very outdated, but there you go.
There you go.
My budget pick was the accessory which changed my winter riding experience, the Snowpea shoe dryer, very kindly bought as a birthday gift by Felix, who's filming this, who also has them. And so compelled are we by the Snowpea shoe dryers, we decided our spy ring would be called Snowpea. Wow. So make of that what you will. They are amazing little ceramic, dead cheap $24.99 shoe dryers that you can slide in after a ride, and they completely rid your shoes of that disgusting cat wee sour smell that seemingly I suffer from and everybody else. No?
Well, I mean, obviously, as BikeRadar's Premier Smart Trainer tester, I never leave the house as soon as
never go outside
as soon as
for
the summer
cycling.
ends. But I do agree, like that has been a big problem, like with riding. I've done a bit more gravel this year, and like getting wet shoes. You've crossed through a puddle that actually turned out to be a fjord.
Yeah.
And you come out the other side with sodden wet feet, and then of course your shoes just take forever to dry. So it's a great idea.
Lots of people commented and were like, well, what's wrong with putting newspaper in your shoes? And I was like, I work in digital publishing, so I never have newspaper at home. But honestly, for 25 quid, these have like revolutionized my winter riding. They don't have horrible wet shoes the day after. They're only 55 degrees Celsius, so not like super hot. They're not even like moldable soles. They're not going to mess with anything like that. And I think it's like a ceramic heating element inside, fireproof, all the rest of it. £25.
How long to dry a pair of shoes would you estimate? Overnight?
It depends on the shoe. If they're
Yeah.
like quite thick, heavy, sort of more mountain bike style shoes, I'd say overnight, like probably 9 odd hours. These are like very mild.
But that's probably for the best, isn't it?
I think it's for the best when you want your shoes to like burst in flames. But I like riding in a bit pervy. I like riding in S-Works vents in the winter because you just wear a thick pair of socks, but they dry really quickly because they're mostly mesh. And like the shoe isn't going to have an insulating effect. I know, Warren, you like a good winter boot. I personally have never found a winter boot that quite worked for me. I much prefer like thicker socks, thin shoe. There you go. Snowpea.
Has anyone else ever tried shoe dryers?
No, I'm quite tempted to though.
Yeah, me
They
too.
are
I'm looking at
excellent.
them. I want one now.
There you go. Well, buy
Jack
them
has
through-
an affiliate link for our Amazon purchases that you can talk to him afterwards, right?
Yeah, you can talk to me and buy
Yeah.
them through an affiliate link for BikeRadar.com so we can make wonderful videos like this. Yes. So those are our budget picks for 2024. Now we're going to go back into our Cycling Illuminati HQ and talk about all the expensive things that we've loved this year. No. Obviously, we've tested a broad range of products across lots of prices. Simon, what's your top no money hold, no money, no budget, whatever? What's your pick?
Well, I think my more expensive pick is Favero's Assioma Pro MX SPD power meter pedals. These were one of the other products that I awarded 5 stars to this year. And basically because I just really couldn't find any faults with them. You know, like obviously, you know, first and foremost is they measure power accurately and consistently. You know, I compared them against the other power meters on my bikes. Like, you know, I had a Stages left-right crank, a Quark D0, you know, my kind of Elite Diretto XR Smart Trainer, for example, and they never kind of like missed a beat in terms of accuracy. But I think obviously for a kind of off-road pedal and any kind of power meter pedal in general, it's really important that it is a good pedal as well. And these are that, like they're less than 200 grams per pedal, I think 192 grams each. So they're very light. You know, they've got a battery life of sort of 60 hours roughly.
More than enough.
You know, rechargeable via a nice little magnetic charger there, which is good because, you know, I have a set of Garmin Vector 3s at home, and obviously the Garmin Rally still run on the same removable coin cell battery system. And like, it's fine, you get more battery life out of that, but you have to then pay for replacements. You got to source replacements, you know, and you know,
Get into them to replace them.
get into them. You have to like remove. You have to use an Allen key to like remove the side, and there's a kind of like a threaded section that you could accidentally cross thread. You know, that used to be a problem when it was originally a problem with the Vector 3s because they shipped with a plastic end cap that people would apparently quite often misthread and then ruin their pedals. So, you know, you kind of avoid all of that stuff. And like, you know, I have swapped between these and say like a Shimano, you know, Dior XT pedal, and basically you can't tell any difference. The only difference is power numbers start appearing at your head unit.
Yeah.
And it's really good. And now these cost €750 or around $760, which is obviously a lot of money. You know, that's not cheap, but it is cheaper than the competition. You know, Garmin's Rally XC200 pedals are more like £1,000, $1,000, you know, €1,000. And in my opinion, you know, they're not as good. The XC pedal, like the off-road one, is not as good. The stack height of the pedal is higher, for example. You know, so you get a little bit less pedaling clearance, and you don't have that kind of direct connection to the pedal itself. So yeah, you know, what I think is really exciting about these is obviously, you know, Favero was very famous for its kind of Assioma Duo pedals,
Great pedals.
great pedals, which have the little pods there, which, you know, doesn't really affect performance, but it does look a little bit clunky. And I think they're going to launch a road version of these in, well, I mean, you know, you'd have to assume that if the spindle's ready, it's just a matter of developing a pedal body for it. So I would, you know, hopefully maybe one for 2025, but we'll have to kind of wait and see on that. But yeah, like if you like power meter pedals, or you want a power meter on your gravel bike, I think these are an ideal option. You know, I think SRAM makes great power meters, for example, for, you know, because it brought Quark, but increasingly its power meters are kind of like becoming more proprietary. You know, the latest Red Explore power meter, for example, has the screw-on chain rings.
Yes.
You know, so you're limited to using it with the chain rings for that group set. So, you know, which is probably not a problem for owners of that group set. But if you ever wanted to get a different group set in the future and, you know, repurpose that power meter, you know, it's going to be tricky. Shimano doesn't make GRX power meters.
Mm-hmm. Weird.
Don't know why, but they just don't do it. And that's just one of those things. You could also use these on a road bike if you didn't mind using SPD pedals. Of course, there's nothing to stop you using a set of like gravel shoes or 2-bolt cycling shoes on a road bike as well. So yeah, I think these are like genuinely one of the best products I tested this year. They were exceptionally hard to find fault with.
So how do you think they've got it so right when real big players in the market, Look, Garmin, have never quite hit the mark?
I don't know, and it is a funny one because I did think about that. Like before they did the Assioma Duos, they were a relatively like unknown company. I think they used to call B Pro, and we used to see them on they sponsored like a Spanish pro team that rode BH bikes a few years ago, and then all of a sudden I think the Assioma Duo pedals kind of like started to get a kind of cult following after the likes of DC Rainmaker gave them really good reviews, and obviously we and other websites tested them and found them to be really good. I don't really know why they have nailed it where others haven't. I mean, obviously they have their own proprietary tech. Obviously it's strain gauges on a spindle and a battery, but obviously the way that you do it is Greek to me, essentially. So I don't really know. I
think one of the key differences with them is that this one doesn't have a replaceable battery. And one of the key issues that you kind of mentioned was, cross-threading, but also not insecure, what was the word you say? Like inconsistent connections with batteries. When I spoke to them for a piece that ran on site, Favero that is, I think they said that I think it's like embodied in epoxy or something, but the all-in-one spindle with the integrated battery is the sort of key difference. So perhaps it's just that they've decided the compromise of having a non-user replaceable battery is worth it for the increased performance and the more reliable connection.
Yeah, maybe. I think in terms of accuracy, the Garmin pedals are fantastic. Like I said, I've got a set of Vector Frees, and I regularly use those for Smart Trainer and Power Meter testing. Like if I test something against a set of Assioma pedals, for example, and the new unit looks off, I often then reconfirm that by bringing in the Vector Frees or whatever, and I'm happy to do that. So I think but I think to Waz's point, like I'm not entirely sure how Favero can make their pedals cheaper than Garmin, who are presumably a much bigger company. But then Garmin have a weird thing with pricing at the moment, where the Tax Neo 3M launched recently as their flagship smart trainer, and it cost £1,800 or £1,749 to be fair.
To be accurate
and fair. Whereas, Wahoo's Kicker V6 recently had a price cut to under £900. So I don't know if it's just that, Garmin is trying to push for bigger profit margins and compared to Favero. I really don't know. But yeah, you're right. Like the Look Power Meters pedals I tested this year, they weren't perfect. I have the feeling with that product that it was maybe launched a little bit too soon. They hadn't quite ironed out all of the issues. They hadn't quite done enough testing. I think they will get there with that eventually. I think Look know what they're doing, and they will get there hopefully. But obviously, it's never good to launch a product that's not fully baked.
If you want to see more on Power Meters, Simon's written enough to fill a whole website on the site. But we've got a list to our best Power Meters, and it covers all Simon's testing. If you like Power Meters, it's a great read.
Thank you.
What's your premium pick for 2024?
My premium pick, it's a bit weird this year because obviously most of my testing is all on road and gravel, and there's been loads of really good stuff out there. There's loads of great bikes, new grip sets like Red Access, Red Explore, really shaking up the market and doing some really interesting things. But most of the things I've really found much favour in are actually the more mundane day-to-day stuff, the commuting stuff. So my expensive pick is this. It's Skarper. So e-bike conversion kits have become ever more popular, ranging from terrible things bought from black sites online, which are going to set fire to your house and are covered in gaffer tape and are delivering food, through to great systems like Switch do some really nice stuff, Booster doing great things, Cytronics again, all really clever little systems, but they're conversions. So you put them on a bike, you're never taking them off. They all require having a wheel built. They all require some amount of cabling to go onto your bike, changing the mount to get the battery on, etc., etc. The beauty of Skarper is the only thing you change on your bike is the rear disc rotor. And this system is no more difficult to fit than a light. It's really, really that simple. Change the disc rotor. You put a little T-shaped bracket on your chainstay. It's handy measuring guide comes in the box with this. You put a cadence sensor, which is like a little gummy. It looks like a accessory light. You put that on your crank arm. click this in place, turn it on, turn on the sensor, wait for the Bluetooth to join each other, then go for a ride. And the first time I rode a prototype of this was probably 2 or 3 years ago, and it was a tin box. But most things were in that. And they didn't give me any instructions. They said, try and put it on that bike and try and get it going. And I had it on the bike, and I was riding around Camden within 10 minutes. And now this is the final system. I've done lots and lots of testing on this. I've been trying to break it. I've ridden it gravel. I've ridden it everywhere that they said it probably shouldn't. I've ridden it in all weathers, and it hasn't put a foot wrong. It's so ridiculously simple, so easy to fit. And it also means that you don't, we were talking earlier about buying like a cheap bike to commute on or whatever. Now you can commute on your best bike. Get there, this comes off, lock your bike up safely. It doesn't look like an e-bike, it's just a normal bike. This comes with you, charge it at your desk. And it's just a brilliant idea, brilliantly realised. For a Gen 1 product, it's so good. It could be improved. I've said that in a review. There's an app coming. I've seen a beta of it. It looks ace. I still think it needs a remote controller on your bars, because it's got like the 3 mode settings, like every e-bike system, which you never use because it's got some really, really smart programming in this. So it just matches your effort when you're going uphill. It just with you. So even in eco mode, it will give you the full power if you need it. If you're slowing up, it will just keep you going. Really simple controls, wireless touch controls. Pedal backwards twice, it sleeps. So you use it to get up a hill, gets to the top of the hill, pedal backwards, it turns off, bomb down the other side. Yeah, and so I'm getting like mileages out of this, like 70, 75 miles on a single charge, and that's off-road.
Wow.
And the power delivery that you get from it, I say it's equal to any of the really good rear hub motor systems. So it's equal to a Marla, it's equal to the FSA system, it's equal to Dynamic. Yet you don't need a new bike. You can just fit this to your bike. So your bike you can use as a commuter all week, get to the weekend, take this off. Only penalty that lives on your bike is an extra 120, 130 grams, which is how much more the rotor weighs than the original rotor.
So if you're kind of unfamiliar with it, it's really interesting, the rotor that it mounts on. It's like a traditional disc rotor, but it has like a geared, almost like a worm gear, would you call it?
It's almost like, it's like basically like a planetary gearbox built inside, and the development on that gearbox was done by Red Bull Formula One. So they've put some torque through it. And Chris Hoy was one of the main R&D guys on it, an investor in the company. He's done a lot of testing on it, and the sort of power he can put through it,
like an F1 car.
Like an F1 car, yeah. And so, I've been hugely impressed with it. I mean, it was intriguing when they first approached me, which was a few years ago, and said, we've got the system. And I thought, this is going to be nonsense. Some idiots out of Camden thinking they're, start up. And I went there.
Because we've seen a lot of things like that in the past, which are duff from the off. So
I know,
healthy skepticism.
And first time I rode it, I went, oh my God, this has got a lot of potential. Even though it was a tin box covered in gaffer tape, and I was riding it in the rain, and and it was sort of the guy who was riding with me was sort of going, oh, I don't know, we've never taken it out in the rain, and it was fine. And then I've ridden like iterations, and then I got this like final pre-production version. A few months ago, and I've been just hammering it. I mean, it brought me the 30 miles to work this morning on a gravel bike, and it will get me home again tonight. So
obviously, Warren's written lots about this on the site. It's worth saying that the audience are what matters, not our opinions. And this has been an enormously popular product on the site. People really engage with this, and it is a really cool take on a product category which hasn't seen a lot of innovation beyond like kind of refining existing solutions. It's a very, very cool bit of kit.
And I know what's coming for it as well. I know some of the stuff that's coming up for it.
It's obviously, like a tease.
I was talking about the app. I was talking about a Bluetooth controller to fit on your bars. But the one thing that I've sort of already kind of pre-ordered because I'm desperate to get a hold of it is they've done a version for this for rim brake bikes.
Interesting.
So they will sell you a hub or they will build you a wheel. I say it needs that, but if you've got a cool old road bike that you very rarely ride anymore, you can turn it into a really cool commuter by buying the non-disc version of it. And the other thing I think is really cool is you can buy more rotors. So you only need one e-bike system. So again, I've got another rotor on order because I want to put it on my wife's bike. So then my wife's road bike will be an e-bike as well. And so we'll have, one system, many different powered bikes for when we want them.
Very cool.
How much does it cost?
£1,495. That includes this with the rotor, with the Bluetooth controller, and a few other bits and bobs. Obviously they are a startup. I think they've pre-sold everything that they've made. So I do imagine the price is going to come down once their economies of scale are up. But talking to the guys there, and they seem to go between genuinely excited about how well it's going and
panicked
on how on earth are they going to keep up with the demand.
Yeah,
but it's a really, really interesting system. And if you think that £1,400-1,500, if you spent £1,000 on a really cool urban hybrid and added this to it, it'll be better than a £2,500 urban hybrid urban e-bike.
Ash, what is your top pricey pick for 2024?
Well, I don't know how I'm supposed to follow that, but it's this, my Garmin Edge 830.
Which costs?
Well, at the moment, you can buy them for about £250.
A man of the people over here.
Yes, and I say, of course, I've broken the brief again by going for something that's not as expensive as the flagship bike computers I've tested this year. But I can't see a reason to switch to using those when I've got this one still.
Why does the 830 have such a special place in your heart?
So it's the last one that came with a relatively thin sort of design. The 840 that followed this was a lot thicker because it had to accommodate the solar system in it. I don't think they got rid of the thickness of it even in the non-solar version. So I couldn't really see the point in upgrading to that. I've also since tested the 1050, the new flagship model as well, but that's a lot bigger again. And I don't, to put it bluntly, I don't ride my bike to look at a massive screen. Yeah. I spend a lot of my life, and I know many people at home they spend a lot of time looking at their phones, looking at computer screens. We do a lot in our job. It's we don't just ride bikes all the time. We've got a lot of work to do, typing up stuff. So I don't want to be looking at a massive screen. I don't need things to be bigger. Now, I totally get the argument that if, you might have, difficulties with your sight, you might need, a bigger screen and be able to see that. I get that point, and that's fair enough. But you can also have a Garmin, Edge 2 Explorer, I think, or something like that. It's called something like that anyway. And that's a big unit in the old sort of 1040 body, and you can get a bigger screen that way. And it's a lot cheaper because you don't have all the features that Garmin chucks at it with every new iteration. Like the spec list on them is ridiculous. You have to scroll down through the PDF when you're looking through the features that you want to see. It does everything that almost anyone needs a bike computer to do, and it does it reliably as well. It's not like Garmin's of past, or talk about Garmin specifically, but I had an old 510 that used to sort of bug out every now and then, and didn't particularly like syncing to my phone, and didn't particularly enjoy being connected to my computer. And it would just say, "I'm here now, I'm not here anymore," and it would just keep reconnecting and disconnecting. But this one here is perfect, and everything syncs beautifully well, and so there's no reason for me to change to one of the newer units. That goes for the Garmin Edge 1050. That goes for a Wahoo Element Ace. And also the latest Hammerhead Karoo as well. None of them present a compelling argument to me to switch over.
I'm looking at the people who know more about these things in the room. Is the 1040 the same era? Is that one?
It is.
That's the next one after. This is the 830. So this is 2 generations old.
Yeah,
now.
but that's the same. So I've got a couple of those that I use for all of my power meter testing, because I run multiple computers, and I also, because I only have 2 of those, I actually also have like a Garmin Edge 810, and like the difference in functionality between the 810 and that generation is enormous. But I don't think that, as says, I don't think the difference between that generation and the current one is anywhere near as big. No. And I think that form factor for me, especially as someone who loves a narrow handlebar, that form factor is absolutely ideal. I wish it didn't have a bezel. But you get a bezel on every single bike computer that is available these days.
It's true.
Infuriatingly,
it's a bugbear of mine as well.
So I can't really hold that against it. But as Ash said, it kind of does all the basics. It's got enough, it's got enough screen size for like following maps and things like that. Even if you're off road, and obviously it has enough modern features, like it can connect to your Di2 or whatever, and it can. It does Bluetooth ANT plus, like it says it syncs with your phone automatically. It has all the kind of features you want in a kind of nice, small, compact form factor. The battery life is also surprisingly good, I think, as well. Yeah. Like I very rarely have to charge mine.
That's because you never ride outside.
Yeah, I can never ride my bike.
Yeah, GPS is always off.
It's always turned off. Yeah, but I also agree. I think it's an absolutely excellent bike computer, and especially when you put that up against say the Wahoo Element Ace that's just launched, for example. The Element Ace looks like a Palm Pilot.
It's
it
enormous.
looks absolutely ridiculous. There may be some people who want an iPad on their handlebars, but I ain't one of them.
No, I have the 1040 is the one I ride, which is essentially like inside software-wise identical, I think, to that essentially.
Yeah.
It's got a massive crack across the screen when I dropped it on a tiled floor. Never mind. But I agree. They're a very good generation of computer, and I see no reason to upgrade.
I think, as you say, they are super reliable as well. And I do remember that, like occasionally with older generation Garmin computers, you would have that thing where it would just hang up mid-ride, and then you'd be like, that's all gone then, is it? Or, you weren't sure if it was going to save it in a kind of corrupt file somewhere. And I never, oh God, touch wood, I never get that with these computers. Yeah, that's not real wood, is it? We're not making enough money on the BikeRadar budget. Yeah, I mean, Warren, you've got a lot more experience, I think, than the rest of us with like Hammerhead computers. Like, do they offer anything kind of compelling over the Garmin's?
They're really innovative. They do things that, that others then follow. Initially, the best thing about the original or Generation 2 Karoo was its predictive climb. It was amazing. That you'd be on any ride. You didn't need to be on a route, and you just get to the bottom of a hill, and it would just give you the profile. And I used to try and fox it by going up a hill and then taking a offcut and taking a different way up, and it reset really quickly. And Garmin brought out a very similar thing. I mean, it had it before. It had the Climb Pro,
but you had to have a route. Set up a route, didn't you?
But then they brought a predictive version of it. It isn't quite as good, but it's very, very close. And then on the latest generation Karoo, they had pin drop navigation. So on your phone, which obviously is very easy to navigate with, you just drop a pin where you want to go, share that pin through the Hammerhead companion app. It comes up on your computer, and if you're set up for tarmac or you're set up for gravel, it will route you there in either of those ways. Now, Garmin have done a very, very similar thing.
Yeah.
And again, it's not quite as good as the Hammerhead, but it's very close. So Hammerhead are very good at innovating, and they're ridiculous updates. I mean, I've just finishing a review that's taken me the best part of a year on the third generation. And every time I've got near to finishing it, they launch a huge update. And you're like, because the one thing that happened with the Karoo was Shimano basically pulled away any DI2 compatibility.
Oh yes, I remember this. Yeah.
But there were workarounds. There's a third party app called KI2, which you could kind of sideload into the Karoo, and then it will talk to Shimano. Obviously, a huge amount of Hammerhead owners are Shimano riders.
Really
it seemed like
silly.
Punitive.
Yeah.
But
if you're fully SRAM red pilled though, then you're like well in.
Oh God, yeah.
SRAM,
It just talks. Everything talks to everything. But Hammerhead have just their latest release is they've opened up that side loading, so you don't have to be, a complete tech nerd to work out to do it. They've just gone, you can just do it. Here's a way.
Shimano did that. I wonder why. I wonder what the sort of like. They will have packaged up some API security, whatever, probably thing. But yeah, like you're right, very, very strange move.
Yeah. It seemed,
Oh well.
It seemed a little bit petulant to do so. But the Hammerhead, I do think, is really good. If I wasn't so totally ingrained in the Garmin ecosystem,
yes.
Having used Garmin since the 610, something like that, a monochrome thing that took best part of 10 minutes to find a GPS signal.
Yeah.
But it's what we had then. So I've got so much data. I've got 18 years worth of Garmin data on my Garmin Connect account, and to be able to switch is like, oh God, it's just I don't know how to export all that. I don't know how to get it into anything else, so I'm kind of stuck to it. And also I think Garmin do, because Garmin is a huge brand making lots and lots of different tech. If you've got a Garmin watch, if you've got like a fitness tracker, etc., etc.
A Garmin yacht navigation system.
Yeah, all of those things. They all combine into Connect. So if you're more multi-sport than just a pure cyclist, then Garmin, I think, is probably still the best system to go with, because you can build on, you can add your running data in there, your swimming data, everything else. So but I think Hammerhead do some really, really clever things, and I am enjoying using it quite a lot. But it's a stupid thing now. I'll be riding with a hammerhead on the front of my bike and a Garmin in my pocket.
My dad's got a boat that's a bit more like a floating skip. Maybe I can call in a boat navigation system. Do you think I can slip that one past the goalie onto the side?
Possibly not. But I think with computers, I think that is one of the key buying decisions that we can never measure here at BikeRadar. So who are we talking to? Someone who's already in another ecosystem, or someone who's already bought into the Garmin ecosystem? For example, when reviewing a product like a Garmin, because that will often dictate. There's a whole lot more money that goes, to having to invest in other products to, buy yourself into another ecosystem. So that's usually the big decision maker for a lot of people, I feel. Just specifically,
be like switching from iPhone to Android, or or going from PlayStation to Xbox.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine that.
Simon, Call of Duty, Bromley.
Well, it is a genuine thing though, because Xbox is, sorry to say it, Xbox if you're watching, but it's a bit dying on its heels, isn't it? So anyway,
I couldn't say. Let's not.
We'll have to get your brother on for that podcast.
Yeah. My kind of expensive pick for this year, I actually don't have to hand. I'm very sorry. You're gonna have to rely on
your Rolex.
Yes, my Rolex. My top expensive pick this year is my Enduro Bearings Maxhit bottom bracket. Quite a boring product, but something which has been so fantastically good this year, I couldn't live without it. So to go back, this is incredibly dull, but who cares? Bottom brackets, sort of threaded bottom brackets for the very longest time were generally speaking optimized around 24mm spindles for external bottom brackets. Would you agree with that, Simon?
I would. Yeah, and as long as you ran a 24mm spindle, they would generally work great, right? But
then over time, 30mm spindles kind of were introduced, and with that came press fit bottom brackets. That wasn't the only reason why they came around, but 30mm spindles, press fit bottom brackets, big bearings, all good. Obviously there's still people out there like me who had threaded bottom brackets, 68mm traditional ones, who then had 30mm spindle cranks. And the big downside to this is there's only so big you can make a bottom bracket, which means that for a 30mm spindle you have to use smaller bearings. And I really love a set of White Industries R30 cranks. Incredibly heavy, quite compromised in terms of construction, but they look sick. So I've run with them for like 8 years and I absolutely adore them. But the original bottom bracket, which came with that crankset, was terrible. I absolutely trashed the White Industries bearings in like 5,000-6,000 kilometers. And then subsequent bearings I just ate through. Got really bored of it. Got this bottom bracket. And I have nothing more to say on it than that. It's fantastically good, and the good thing about the Maxhit bearing system is that the outer cup, the actual external cup of the bottom bracket, is the outer race of the bearing. So you imagine most bottom brackets, like a cartridge bearing is pressed in, the bottom bracket is like integral to the bearing itself, and this enables Enduro to use much larger ball bearings inside. But I made a mistake when I first wrote about this BB, and I purely attributed its increased performance or longevity to that. What I've since discovered is the key problem with a BSA 30 bottom bracket is that because the bearings are larger, they are less tolerant of poor manufacturing. So if they're slightly misaligned, it's like more exaggerated because the bearing is larger. Now, when I had the cheaper BBs and I was just smashing bearings in, unsurprisingly, I was getting like genuinely about 300k out of these bearings, smacking in some cheap bearings. They weren't particularly straight, and that's why I was chewing through them. This thing gets around that completely, where provided your shell is well faced, which of course it is, because I did it prior to building the bike, it just should last indefinitely. And if it doesn't, they've got a lifetime warranty on them, which includes corrosion. So thus far, for £180, a very, very worthwhile buy. And if you eat through headset bearings, I don't know who does these days, they also make
people on.
See, that's the thing. Actually, that I was going to say that's a real big. I mean, in the past, all we've ever talked about with bearings is upgrading to ceramics to get that little bit more speed. So you're talking about putting them in your hubs of your wheels and et cetera, et cetera. I think the most important things now is bottom brackets and headsets. Headsets especially. Now everything's gone internal. All that cable routing is routing everything down through your headset. And all those brake hoses, what are they doing? They're just carrying moisture directly into your bearings. I've seen so many like fairly recent bikes where the headsets are completely shot, not through use, just through corrosion. So upgrading to stainless or ceramic for your headset bearings on an internal system, it's just got to be the way to go, because otherwise your servicing cost is extremely, extremely high, because it's not like old headsets where you can just pull it out, pop new one in. Now you've got to take the brakes out, bleed the brakes again, fully deconstruct the front end, put it back on. So if you're taking your bike to a shop to be done, the service costs on that are absolutely astronomical.
Yes.
Oscar young Oscar Huckle, our in-house Audaxer, wrote a fantastic feature on that, specifically talking to shop mechanics about why this was a much bigger problem than many realise. And obviously, when you're buying a bike, of course, they don't tell you, oh, by the way,
It's going to cost like £400 to have.
this bike is going to cost an arm and a leg to get it serviced, and you will need to have it serviced because you won't be able to disassemble the front end to service it yourself to prevent that thing. So I think it's a great, like you say, you can get ceramic bearings, or like Ceramic Speed have done like SLT bearings, which are solid lubricant technology bearings. But have we seen those in a BB yet?
Yes, actually. Who was it? It was Cane Creek.
Cane Creek, that's the one.
And they I don't think they were quite as good as they hoped because they withdrew them.
A bit more drag, right?
I think the like claims around longevity didn't really stand up quite to scrutiny. But to be fair to Cane Creek, they sort of acknowledged all this. But for BSA 30 bottom bracket users, do not waste your time with anything else. The Maxhit BB is amazing. They also do them for T47. They do press fit ones. Really great. Really, really good product. And like quite a cool, innovative thing.
Or run a crankset with 24 mil spindle, right?
Yeah.
That is the alternative choice.
Yeah, I've got Dura Ace BBs. Dura Ace BBs are like 60 quid at RRP, maybe like £30 in real world pricing. And they
don't look as good.
They don't look as good, but they also don't die ever. They last forever and ever and ever. So yes, that is the simpler solution. But White Industries R30 cranks look sick and they look really cool on my brown bike.
Yeah, and also to be fair, you might be running, say, something like you could be running a SRAM crank, right? Like a dub.
Yes, they do a dub version as well, I should say. 29.88.
Which is far more common and less bougie.
Yes, less bougie. There you go. Bottom bracket is that compellingly exciting. I put it in as my top pick for Gear of the Year.
That's a rather restrained choice in terms of price.
I mean, £180 is quite expensive for a BB.
That's true.
In the relative
That's true, yeah.
Anyway, those are our picks. Of course, those are just our highlights from this year. There's lots more from all these wonderful minds published across BikeRadar over the festive break. By the time you're seeing this, I'm sure they'll all be live. But of course, you've got 500 other reviews to read through from the year as well. Thank you very much for your hard efforts this year. Lots of wonderful stuff being published on the site. If you've got any questions, comments, feedback, or your own picks from best products you used this year, please leave those in the comments. We always like to hear what people out there are actually riding and using. In the meantime, if you want to watch more, check out this video. A wonderful look into 2025 road tech predictions with Dan Bigham, with the wonderful Simon Bromley.